Hi everyone, this is Sheba and I'll be your co-host for tonight. So we are really excited to welcome you all for tonight's session on writing with empathy, creating content for real people. Now, I'm delighted to introduce our speaker, Greg Hardigan, senior technical writer from DocuSign. To highlight about Greg, he combines a global background in product training with a passion for clear, empathetic communication. As a playwright and storyteller, he brings a unique lens to technical writing, helping users connect with content on a deeper level. Today, Greg will share how thinking like our customers can transform the way we approach technical writing, from improving usability to building trust and connection through every word. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box and we'll make sure to address them towards the session. With that, I'll hand it over to Greg. The stage is all yours.
Hi, I'm Greg Hardigan. I'm a senior technical writer at DocuSign. As Shiva said, I write and create videos for DocuSign's integrations for Salesforce and HubSpot. As about me, just briefly, I grew up in the Boston area, and I've also lived in Chicago and Washington, D.C. Before moving here to the Nashville area. I come from a long line of support jobs, including desktop and online support, and as a traveling product trainer, showing administrators how to use stuff. I'm also a playwright, as she mentioned, and my stuff has been produced around the world, which is kind of a fun little side hobby. Yeah, that's about me. So thanks so much for coming to this talk today. I know you have busy lives, and it means a lot that you spared this time for me. And here are the things that we're going to talk about in brief. So first, what is empathy? Just what is it? What are we talking about when we talk about empathy? And then there are three sections: planning with empathy, writing with empathy, testing with empathy, and then your thoughts and questions will come at the end if you have any. Hopefully you do. So for starters, let's define it. What is empathy? It isn't the same as sympathy. Sympathy is a concern for someone who is experiencing something difficult or painful. People often mix up sympathy and empathy. Empathy is actively sharing in the emotional experience of another person. So a sympathetic person says, hey, it's too bad this person isn't happy. I feel bad for them. An empathetic person says, I wonder why this person is unhappy. And ideally, how can I help? Here we have a nice dog helping another dog. It's a little dog empathy here. So now, what does it mean for tech writing? What does empathy mean? How can we be empathetic? For as long as I can remember, I've had this thing that I do where I imagine myself as other people. Like sometimes people I know, sometimes people I dream up. I'll read a story about a person in a car accident and I'll see a little movie of the event from their perspective. It's hard to describe. Or I'll see an unusual person at a restaurant and imagine what they're thinking. Then when I write something, whether it's creative or technical, I try to embody the reader, or the listener, or the viewer experiencing what I created. So in tech writing, I'll write something and then I'll when I'm done, I'll flip to the other side of my screen mentally and imagine what the reader scanning through my content is experiencing. Like, does it look good? Does it make my head hurt? Do my images look sharp? Am I helping this person? Because that's mostly what I want out of this. Other than a career, I really do actually want to help people, make their lives easier, make their jobs easier. But even if this impulse comes naturally, empathy is something you have to work at. It's a process of continuing improvement, just like managing documentation. You're never really done after you write the documentation. You have to keep tending to the garden, as it were. But who are we helping? Who are our readers and our listeners? See, we generally talk about two types of people. There's administrators and then end users, which has come to take on a sort of strangely negative tone. So who's an administrator? What do we think about when we think about administrators? I looked up the definition and it says a person who manages and supports a computer system or network. So that's pretty basic. Someone who's in charge of systems. I asked AI to create an image of an administrator, and here's what I got. See, here we see a person who looks happy, knowledgeable, refreshed, in charge, in control. And since AI engines just scrape the internet for images of administrators that real people have put up, this is probably what a lot of people think of when they think of an administrator, a with it person. But what do we really think of when we think deeper about an administrator? So I looked for synonyms, and the synonyms include chief, commander, authority, captain, leader, You get the picture. Smart, capable, commanding people. So who are administrators in real life? I did some research on a staffing site, and the ages of folks are on the older side of the workforce. So 40 to 48 years is the average age for an administrator. A little older than you might imagine. Maybe they've been working with technology that they learned when they were younger, and they've been handed that, and they've been working with it for a while. Maybe the thing that you're documenting is something that they just got handed, a week ago, and they don't really know that much about it. Many went to a four-year college or grad school, but many did not. So 27% have a high school diploma or an associate's degree, which means you spent a year or two getting some college education. Now, here's the real telling detail. Switch around a lot. They move a lot. They're in demand, I guess. So 17% of administrators are in the role for less than a year, and 48% of administrators are in the admin role for less than 2 years. So admins learn your product, get to know it, and then move on frequently, and that creates a knowledge void. So even if they are proficient with your stuff, someone else is always taking the reins. And many also administrators speak other languages in addition to English. So you may be dealing with a lot of people who speak English as a second language. That's something to consider when you're writing content in English or whatever language you're writing content in. Other people with other language facilities are going to be reading this stuff. And the skills they listed in their resumes were awfully light on troubleshooting, tech support, and software applications, which I find to be really, really helpful skills for an administrator to have. So they might be experts on managing, say, Active Directory, but not so knowledgeable on the application that you write for. And if problems come up, they're probably not as equipped to leap in and help, at least manage helping the problem with the system as someone in, say, support would be. They might lean heavily on your documentation. And from my experience over years as a support agent, there are a lot of other common roles for software administrators. A lot of people are an administrator by accident. Many of them were hired for something else. They were forced to accept administrator duties for your company's software. And many of them are grumpy about that, especially when they build and maintain templates and workflows and other complicated stuff that our software companies and our brilliant people put out there in the marketplace. And they're doing this in addition to, say, running the legal department. It's weird. I've had so many admins tell me that they're actually the head of legal and were handed the software that I am documenting as a side thing because nobody else wanted to do it. So things to keep in mind. Now, who is an end user, right? This terminology is, as I said, has taken on a sort of a negative connotation over the years, like some goof who can't figure out how to work a wireless mouse, just who is the end user? And the definition, consumers who use goods and services. That's pretty basic. So I asked AI to create an image of an end user in front of a computer. And this is what the AI world and probably the greater world came up with. It is none too flattering. But from my days in support, I can tell you there are plenty of end users, quotations around it, who are just as savvy about using software platforms as their administrators. Plenty of them even gave their administrators advice. But we're not really writing for the lady with the whiteboard, nor the slovenly dude that we see here. This is kind of a secret. Forget these images, forget those strong terms about them. This is who we're really writing for. We're really writing for this guy, because studies have shown the best way to be understood is to write at an 8th grade level. So that's an educated 13 or 14-year-old kid. So yes, administrators and end users alike, prefer content written for middle schoolers, which you may not be thinking of when you're writing. So how do we create for these users? Now, I like to talk about the example of ramps and stairs when I talk about creating documentation. So ramps, they're built for wheelchairs, right? So they seem to have one purpose, only for wheelchairs. But who also uses ramps? Well, if you ever sit in front of a big building with stairs and a ramp in front of it for even a few minutes, and it's a busy area, you're going to see all kinds of people who could totally take the stairs, not take the stairs for one reason or other. People with strollers, you don't want to back that thing up a staircase. I've done it before. It's not fun. It's not pretty. People with sore joints, children, you just learn how to walk. You probably want a ramp. People who can't see, people hauling freight, a big hand truck with a heavy thing, or if you're just tired, if you're an able-bodied person who is just tired. So who uses stairs? And stairs were just invented for, efficiency. Like you want to get someone from down here to up there quickly as possible, as directly as possible. You just build these little things you can step on all the way up. So stairs are kind of favored by people who are in a hurry, people who maybe want exercise, or people who just like a direct path to where they're going. Now, or people training to be the heavyweight champion of the world. If you will indulge me, a small Rocky gif here. He did a lot of training running up those stairs. He would not have wanted a ramp, wouldn't have got as much exercise. So stairs people will run right past the ramp, but the ramp people will really appreciate the help. And on different days and on different situations, stair people become ramp people and vice versa. I mean, after running up all these stairs, the next building Rocky went to, he might have wanted to use the ramp just because he's tired. Even the champ gets tired. So how does the ramp and stairs concept work for tech writing? What am I talking about here? Yeah, well, it's based on telling people what they need to accomplish before starting a task, even if it seems obvious. So tell people if they need administrator access. Tell people what version of the app they need to install before they can do this thing. Tell them whatever they need to do before they can complete your task. And this keeps a reader from wasting time and getting frustrated if they don't have these credentials or these things accomplished. Now, a stairs person is going to run right past these prerequisites. They're not going to care. They're going to be like, yeah, I know all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. How do I do this thing? But someone who is, say, the head of legal, we'll go back here. The head of legal might, get handed your software application and be like, oh my God, what am I doing? I have to create a template. And they jump into the software and start trying to use it, and it's frustrating them and they're not getting anything done. And they start saying, I hate blank product, which is the last thing on earth you want them to say. You want them to love your product. So having these prerequisites gives the ramp for these people, right? It's the ramp they can walk up and get to the door slowly, cautiously, carefully. And when they get there, they know they've gone the right way. So there are and also, you want your documentation to look clean. At least I do, and I think everyone else does that I know. So are there a million prerequisites gunking up your task, right? Like maybe you don't want to have all that stuff at the top of a task topic. What I like to do is if there's a lot of them, like in that last screen, I like trying to create prerequisite tasks a task topic that makes the prerequisite active. So instead of just dumping a bunch of stuff and saying these are all the things you need to do and making people get a little frustrated or scared, first of all, in the prerequisites I usually link to whatever it is they need to do so you don't leave them searching for it. But also a prerequisite task takes something out of that link and creates a document. So here you see we have a prerequisite task that I put up here. So you have to install DocuSign Apps Launcher 7.4 or higher, disconnect and reconnect DocuSign Salesforce with a little warning, open Apps Launcher, go to Setup User Management, re-add your DocuSign users, reactivate access. These are all things that would gunk up the top of a task topic. But what you do is you create this prerequisite task, and then you go into your task topic and you drop one link on the top that says, before you begin, someone can click that thing, open up your prerequisite task, and you haven't gunked up the stuff. People who don't need this information are going to zip right past it and not even look at it. But people who are the head of legal or whatever, or sales, are going to want that link, and they're going to thank you for it. So yeah, and then also I say leave breadcrumbs. It's the Hansel and Gretel thing. You leave breadcrumbs through the woods so the kids can find their way back. And then write the steps that users need to take to get to the procedure, even if they seem obvious. So the reader might be accessing the entire platform for the first time. And if they know this info already, again, they can just scan ahead. They don't need to get mad at having these first steps. They can just, studies have shown people scan their eyes right to the information they want and they skip the information they don't want. People are actually really good at scanning information and getting to what they need. So yeah, also I say that it's a good idea if you can and you have the capability and the will to do it, just to give people alternative ways to find out information. Like different people like to consume different ways. So, we have DocuSign has a community. They have people that write blog posts, and they'll take a topic and kind of like drill down on a topic. Give them something they probably don't know. Like people will make workflow recipes that show someone how to build a template to generate NDAs. So they'll say, okay, it's one thing to know how to use our product to build a template, but it's another thing to give you all the building blocks you need to build something real that you're probably going to have to build, like an NDA. So a blog like this is a great way to drill down. It's not typical technical documentation where you're showing people how to do one thing. It's a mix of things blended together, which is why sometimes they call it a recipe. Yeah, and what about people who don't want to read? They may have ADHD, other neurotypes that make it hard to focus. They don't want to sit in front of a page or a screen and look at something and drill down through all your steps. They might be visual learners. That's a thing. They might just prefer to watch someone else do the work and learn how to do something that way. So what I like to do is I like to create videos and link them to the content that I make. So you give the reader a choice right up front. Like, so this is a task topic that I have here. Step 2, this is a big stretch of topics that show you how to build something called a gen template, which is a document generation template for DocuSign. So in step 2, I have here right at the top, hey, this video explains the step. So if someone wants to skip the documentation and go straight to a video, they'll just select that link, it pops open for them, and they can pause it and go through it and stuff like that. And we also have these videos built into the user interface. So if you're building a template in Salesforce for DocuSign, you have this little thumbnail in the upper right corner. And when you select it, it opens up and just shows the video and kind of a 3/4 overlay, and it helps you build your template. So I like doing that. And if you feel like it's in your power and capability to do it, I definitely recommend creating videos because people like them. Other people, we did this other thing. A colleague of mine and I had a series of things. So I write release notes, and release notes have lots of, like, especially the fixes, they have lots of little tiny technical details in there that are hard to describe. And so what I did is my friend reached out to me and said, hey, what if we did a series about the release notes where we just kind of demystify them and make them easier to understand? And so this is a still from a video I produced with my coworker, Lauren. And what we would do is we would just sit down in a really jokey manner. She's like a fun person with an Irish accent, She would ask me questions about the release notes, from the perspective of a user, and I would answer them in real talk. Like, all right, it says all this stuff. What it really means is this. We fixed this thing. It was broken before. Now you can do this. So that's a fun series. I kind of want to refresh that as well. This is information about videos. 83% of people prefer videos over written content, at least from the survey that I studied. 87% of viewers prefer real people versus AI or animated characters. So they want to see your face, and they want to hear your real voice, and they want to see you showing them how to do stuff. They don't want Clippy the clip art dude from Microsoft or a bouncing animated rabbit with a robot voice. They want real people. And strangely enough, over the last couple of years, people have switched to wanting longer instructional videos, like 10 to 19-minute videos, as opposed to like the short, 1 to 2 minute ones that they used to want, which is interesting. They kind of want deep dives about products and features rather than the quick bites they used to get. Although I do make a lot of 2-minute and under videos for the people who don't want to sit through that much. And 66% watch at least one how-to video per week, which is a lot. So even if these numbers don't match the entire reality of humanity, it's a lot of people. So even if 60% of people prefer videos, it's definitely worth pursuing. So now you've thought about the types of content you want to deliver, and it's time to plan how to structure your written content, in ways that your readers can best consume it. So what I like to do is talk about what we do at DocuSign is we have 4 different topic types. So a concept is, hey, what is this thing? You have gen templates. What are gen templates? And so we just say what it is, how it's used, give you an overview. It's not telling you how to do something. It doesn't have numbered steps. A reference, kind of a toolbox documentation bit where you can open it up and see, so these are all the icons that don't have words on them in the user interface. Here's what they mean. Here's what they do. Something like that, where you can refer to a document to know what you can do with our products. And then a task topic is probably the most common. This is just how do I do it, right? So I'm trying to build a template. Tell me how to build a template, and I'll go through it and I'll have a template at the end. And then troubleshooting, not a lot of people do troubleshooting topics, and I really recommend that you do because there's so much stuff that can go wrong even if you're doing something right. There's stuff that you might not know about a product, like you're setting up a new feature, and if you enter your UAT, test credentials instead of your production credentials, it switches environments and you end up with the wrong, environment that you're looking at. You think everything's gone horribly wrong. And then, common error messages that people get that when they're trying to use something and it fails. So I feel like I build a lot of troubleshooting topics because I just feel like they're really useful tools. And what you kind of do is you get ahead of the problems that people might have when they're going to use your documentation. I feel like telling them what could go wrong, as they're working on it, and if it does go wrong, how to fix it is a great thing to have in your tool set. And then you can just link to your troubleshooting topics on your task page. So you don't want to drop it into your task, but at the bottom or on the side, you can say, here are a couple troubleshooting topics. So there are a couple different ways of choosing layouts, right? What's becoming popular, which is not the way I build stuff, but is becoming more popular, is a long scrolling Omni document where you dump the concept, the references, the task topic, any troubleshooting, different bits and images and stuff like that. You just dump it all into one long scrolling page. And the idea is someone's on a cell phone and they're scrolling through the thing, and it helps them. They don't have to jump away to other content. This is one way of doing things, and the good is that it gives you one document that contains everything. So if a support person wants to pass off information to a customer, they have one link. They can pass it off to the customer and say everything's in this one page. And it's also good for mobile phones. The problem is it's for people who don't like looking at a ton of information all in one page, and it scrambles their brain, kind of like mine. It's hard to find information that you want in these giant documents. And it leads to the I can't do this mentality, where if I look at a troubleshooting or at a topic and it has 75 steps in it, I will just quit on it. I'll be like, I can't do this. Someone else has got to build this template. It's not going to be me. It looks too hard. And that's the opposite of what you want. So I like breaking information into bite-sized chunks and use linking. So you create something. It's like, there's this old expression, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So like if there is like building a template, a DocuSign template in Salesforce, there's 7 stages, and each stage has a number of steps inside of it. And if you drop 7 stages worth of steps onto one page and show everyone everything they can do on that thing to build a template, I'd quit. I wouldn't do it. So what I do is I like saying, stage 1, here are the steps, move on to stage 2 and link to the next one. And it gives people encouragement, right? You start doing things, you finish the first task, hey, I did it. You move to the second task, hey, I did it. It builds confidence. It builds, your ability to deal with this giant thing in a manageable way. So it gives you the information and chunking content gives you just the information you want. It doesn't overwhelm you. And it's, like I said, it's good for large sequences of steps, like, staged, template building and stuff like that. I think the only bad thing is it does rely on linking and context, where you have to jump to a link to get to the next bit of information. But the way DocuSign and most people lay out their sites is you open one topic and it opens our support site, and on the left, all the other topics are there that relate to the first one, the one you're on. And I add links to the bottoms of mine where, it says go to step 2 and there's a link and you click it. So yeah, so now that we've considered our readers in the planning stage, how do we employ empathetic techniques in our writing? So this is the actual where the rubber meets the road. So if your organization has a style guide, learn it. And if not, if they don't have one, just create your own style guide if you can, right? Some people are working at a smaller shop. Just be consistent. Hemingway is a free tool that I like to use that simplifies your writing. So remember that 8th grade kid that we're writing for? Hemingway will tell you the grade level that you're writing at on the side. Use AI tools like ChatGPT or Gemini to simplify things. You can put complicated writing in and have it simplify it for you. Yeah, also Be careful with AI though, because it can mangle stuff and put untruths and bad information in there. So always triple check after you use AI, or you can use an editor tool like Grammarly, and if you can tie it to your style guide, that's great. So talking about when to use screenshots, I know some people hate them and some people love them. I tend to use them judiciously. So when a user interface is busy, when there's a lot of information on it, like Salesforce has a lot of icons and words all over the page, and when the tasks the reader needs to perform are hard to describe, so you're trying to describe it, but your words are getting a little twisted, or when you want to add visuals to a long procedure. So if you do need to add a bunch of steps on one page, sometimes it's good to break it up in one of the more complicated areas with sort of an anchor image. So this is a busy Gen template interface that demonstrates how different fields relate to their corresponding buttons. So I added a screenshot here because it's hard to describe this to a reader and guide them through it. So the screenshots say, oh, there's the add button down there. Oh, that relates to the owner field. Oh, this one relates to the manager field. This one relates to user role. So you know what you're working with. Here's a procedure that's actually very simple. It's hard to describe though. So the reader needs to copy a very specific bit from this link text, but if they don't get it exactly right, the template that they're building won't work at all. It won't find the template it needs. So yeah, this is where you add an image and you put the little highlighted part in the URL and tell them just grab the part and paste it. This is a long procedure with a lot of sub steps. There are even more steps after this image. They wouldn't fit on the page. So here's where the image acts like an anchor. So you're saying, oh my God, this is a lot of steps. Oh, hey, look, an image. So it's kind of like a little refresher there, refreshment moment. When to use GIFs? I use GIFs sometimes. So when you're describing a multi-part sequence, or when the cursor moves, make user interface elements appear like it isn't there until you move the cursor over it, and then it's there. Stuff like that is hard to describe, and it's hard to illustrate in an image. So sometimes I will use a GIF. So this is a difficult one with the Gen template process. You're copying stuff on the right-hand side, these tags that you create, and you're pasting it into the Word document that you're going to use as your template. So this is really hard to describe. Copy this tag, open your Word doc, find the place in the document you want to drop it, drop the tag in there, and I do describe it, of course, in the tech writing part, but I put a GIF in because I'm just like, it just seems like the nicest way to do it, and the way that people are going to have the most success. And on this one, this is an element one, right? Like the element doesn't exist until you bring the cursor over it, and then it shows up. So that's one that I, of course, describe, but it's hard to, get to without an image helping. And here's where you get to the real meat of writing empathetically. This is the actual writing. This is the words. So all that stuff is great, and it's empathetic on a basic level for like, hey, you as a human, I want to help you as best I can. But here's where we get into the actual stuff, the writing, the words. So we want to write at an 8th grade level or lower, use 20 words or fewer per sentence, use empathetic word choices, and also don't write like a robot because nobody wants that. But this is a sentence from a real legal document. It's 98 words, 752 characters. It's one sentence. It takes 25 seconds to read, according to Hemingway. I'm using the Hemingway app here. So does this make sense to the average person? So the Hemingway app lists the reading level as postgraduate, which is like a graduate degree. So it's certainly not something an 8th grader wants to see, and neither do I. A whole bunch of legal jargon. So I've reduced this sentence. I went in and did my own version of AI. I reduced the sentence to its essence here. So this is really what it's saying. It's saying basically the borrower releases the lender from all liability. I've reduced it to 8 words, 52 characters. You can see from Hemingway, it's got grade 8, and it takes 2 seconds to read. So way better. The squirrel is relieved, and your readers will be relieved too when you do stuff like that for them. Also, empathetic words. We're going to avoid ableist words, and we're going to avoid problematic terms and techno jargon. So what are we talking about when we talk about that? So, ableism is the belief that bodies that don't look or work the same as others are less important or less valuable, right? And that I'm grabbing these definitions from a website from the ADA, Americans for Disabilities Act. So 1.3 billion people have a significant disability. It's 16% of the world's population. And, it says, and I agree, that differing abilities are only disabling if we don't offer help. So if you don't make wheelchair ramps, and if you don't make curbs that roll into the street with little ramps, then it's a detriment to be rolling around in a wheelchair. But if all that stuff exists, it's not a disability. It's not a disabling thing. So yeah, the problem is prioritizing helping people who need help. So alt text, alternative text, this is a brief description of an image that gives context to visually impaired users. So you place it under an image or a GIF. Alt text also improves search engine optimization for your content by providing context about the image. So it helps your readers or your listeners in this case, and it also helps you. So about alt text, these are tips. Most screen readers stop at 125 characters. So anything you write past that number of characters is only for you. And use a period at the end so the listener knows the description is done and didn't just get cut off by the screen reader. And don't describe too much, don't describe too little. So this alt text gives no specifics. The listener is left without any key information. Bar chart with colors. Technically that's accurate, but really unhelpful. This one, good alt text, tells the listener the specific details the image is used to illustrate. So this is descriptive, but at 93 characters, it still falls well below the screen reader threshold of 125. So a bar chart shows that 375 mango trees were planted in 2010, and the highest number in 6 years. That's what they actually need to know. We had a professor who used voice recognition software and who didn't tap or click anything because he couldn't use his hands. So use select instead of click, use enter instead of type because people who can't type are sort of being called out when you say type. Enter just means whatever method you're using. Turn on, so when you're like turning on a feature, turning off a feature, turning on instead of enable, because enable is a pretty obvious ableist word. Turn off instead of disable. These words are offensive to some people with disabilities, and the words aren't even accurate, right? So like no one ever says disable the lights before you leave. So turn off, I think, is just more accurate. Allow list versus whitelist. This has been discussed quite a bit, I think, but there's just a lot of examples in language where the term black means bad, the term white means good, and they have histories in old racist thinking. Red lines is a weird one. People still use it all the time. Red lines is actually, it's a term that's coined to describe the discriminatory practices in Chicago, Illinois, of banks classifying certain neighborhoods as hazardous or not worthy of investment due to the racial makeup of the residents. So they would make red lines around whole neighborhoods and say, don't loan to people in these neighborhoods. And I still hear people use red lines quite a bit. So use edits or markups instead of that. Avoid acronyms, using acronyms before you've defined them, because not everyone's going to know the meaning. You're going to confuse people that think, that don't know the acronym. And some people are just going to think that they're not smart enough to follow your guide. They'll just say, I don't understand this. And that's the opposite of what you want. Also, other countries and cultures don't have the same expressions and terms that you have. So don't use region-specific terms and phrases. Sometimes there's no substitute in another language for the expression that you used. And many translators also must recreate screenshots or GIFs that you added to your guides, but in their language. So if you add images with no text, like inline images, icons, translators don't have to do extra work. If you leave language-specific tags and URLs, translators must remove these tags, which is time-consuming and annoying. And added work not only annoys your translators, but it just ends up costing your company a lot more. So to illustrate the problem, this is an exchange I had with a hotel in Japan. I asked for a favor in advance of our stay, and when I was signing off, I said, take care, which is what I say a lot. It's just a nice thing to say to people. But the agent didn't know what take care meant, so their response made me stop for a moment. They said, please be careful. And I said to my wife, like, why do I need to be careful? And I was like, oh, I said take care. And they were kind of mirroring what I said to them. I think it was an expression that probably doesn't exist in Japanese, and they were just trying to mirror it to me. It may have sounded like a warning to them too, like take care. So yeah, don't use idioms. This is just a helpful icon with no words. So for a translator, this is great. You can go in and translate the text, and there's this little grid image that's inline in the text. There's no words in it. and they can just use it. This has a lot of UI going on, so I need the words in the image. A translator is stuck recreating this one, but they'll understand because it's their job. But here you need words. This is an example of the URL thing. This has the language tag EN/US, which you don't want because then the translator has to go in and remove that. So what you do is you give them a link without that stuff in there, and it will just, when someone clicks the link, their browser will figure out what language they're using, and it will just open them for them in that language. Use examples. I like to use examples. They do more than explain, they illustrate. So procedures will tell you how to do things, but they don't give you the why. And examples give practical information. So this is a concept topic without an example. It's talking about DocuSign Gen and how you can use it in Salesforce. And then this one is showing an example. So we have the first bit about the context, and then an example. Okay, you're going to build a Salesforce flow. You add a generate agreement with DocuSign step. Then you configure the flow to trigger a document. When a user clicks on the button, it changes the stage to negotiation review. Salesforce does the thing that you want, and DocuSign generates the document. So that is use an example that helps a user understand why they're doing what they're doing. Avoid techno jargon. This is a content I found instructing users on how to locate their Zoom meeting ID in an email. So this actually kind of makes it awful and destroys all meaning and makes the user wonder how they could do this, or they don't even know what this person is saying. It's just nonsense. So Owl No Like, this is the user looking at that. So I rewrote it. So on the bottom, you see step 1, open your Zoom email and copy the meeting ID number in the message. That is the distillation of this entire techno jargon thing. Above it, I prefer the second one. I think probably everyone else would too. One more thing that I like to do is, instead of gunking up the task topic with everything you can do, all the options, like a lot of times there'll be a little caret you can expand, and it has a bunch of options that a lot of people aren't going to use. I'll document it still, but I'll create a task topic for just that set of options and link to it in the main task topic. So I'll say, okay, if you want to do these options, click this link, select this link, and it'll open up for you. But if you don't, skip past it. So we've planned with empathy. We've written with empathy. Good job. We're doing well. And now it's time to test how we're doing with the whole empathy thing. So first, let's check back with the images we went through earlier. You remember who we're writing for, right? So remember this lady? We're not writing for her. Sorry, AI. This guy? Not writing for him either. Sorry, AI. This guy, the 8th grader, which is basically everyone. It's the first lady, the second guy, and everyone in between. People prefer text that's written for an 8th grader. So before you publish, polish up your stuff, right? So you got to use some tactics before you publish, even if your people have already given you the green light. People say to me all the time, I'll send them documentation, and the people who create the product will say, they'll write LGTM, which means looks good to me, and those are the notes. And at the beginning, I would say, great, what I wrote was perfect. But what I've learned quickly is that it just means I've scanned through it and you've accurately documented how to build this thing, but they haven't really checked. So here's where you treat yourself to your future reader's experience. Try your own documentation. And here's a dog drinking champagne, but it's not really champagne, it's something harder. But drink your own champagne. Yeah, that means, if you think it's so great, you try it. So yeah, if you have a dev environment, a developer environment, publish your content to that and take a look at it. So if you don't, just save it as a PDF or something and bring it up in your screen and look at it there. Are there alignment issues? Do the images look okay? Is the spacing even? Does the content scan easily? That's a big one. I've brought up stuff before and I thought was great, and I'd be like, oh, it's all gummed up in the middle. If you were a customer finding this info for the first time for a product you don't know, if you were the head of legal, when you read this, would you be pleased? Would you be confused? Would you want to print it out just so you could crumple it up and burn it? So try it, right? Open a test environment. You got your doc open. Open a test environment if you can, and go through it again once more for funsies, and see if it works and if there are points of frustration in there. And if it works and you're not frustrated, pat yourself on the back. You did a great job. And if not, pat yourself on the back anyway because you discovered flaws in time to fix them. So another thing I like to do is find a peer editor. This is someone whose work you admire and ask if they'll give you notes. Just say, can I show you this? I started a peer review group with other subject matter experts and support agents and DocuSign University creators, and we look at each other's work and give notes. And it started when a subject matter expert, a really smart guy, messaged me about the release notes. And he said, I don't understand this part of the release notes. And this dude is brilliant. So I figured if he doesn't understand it, there's a high chance that all these other people out there are not going to understand it. So I met with him. I listened to his criticism. I changed the documentation and we collaborated on that. And I am still 4 years later working with him on editing and creating new content. He comes up with, supplemental information that I don't even know about that you can do, and he'll surface it to me, and I'll add that to the documentation too, rather than just editing what I wrote. So even after you publish, your work is not complete. So you got to consider these steps to keep your content fresh, empathetic, accurate, and up to date. So work with people in brand and marketing to strengthen your understanding of not just how the product works, but why people would want it, like how it would help them. Learning sort of the salesy side of it is what people are a little bit allergic to in tech writing, but it just really deepens your understanding of what you're creating, who you're creating this stuff for, and how they're going to use it. And I just feel like that's kind of invaluable. And also what I do is I follow Slack channels like a hawk. So, which is an expression that may not translate to other languages, but I go on to Slack and I follow all the channels that they're related to my products, and I try to monitor if people complain about the documentation. Like I went to this part and it didn't make sense or it didn't work or it changed, the UI changed and no one told me. Also, I get a lot of troubleshooting topics from Slack exchanges that begin with someone complaining about on one end, people jumping in and offering solutions, and then someone at the end saying, I fixed it and here's how. Boom, you got a troubleshooting topic right there, and you didn't even have to do the work for it. You just have to transcribe it. So that's great. It's also useful for placing like tips and notes and warnings or adding prerequisites to documentation you have. People will say, hey, I'm trying to build this thing and it isn't working. And then someone will say, well, did you clear this, setting in Salesforce first? And they'll be like, no. Oh, now it works. Boom, you put it in your documentation. Oh, I got to put that prerequisite that you got to clear that flag in Salesforce. And also set up meetings with support. They're going to tell you the pain points and gaps in documentation like nobody else. And they might unload on you sometimes, but it's really helpful and constructive information to know because they are the ones following the stuff and working with customers directly. And if it's not working for them, it's not working for anybody. If your content is already published, show it to someone who knows nothing about it is kind of useful. Like, show it to your partner, show it to a friend. And this is only if it's published, right? You don't want to show stuff that you're working on that's not published yet. But if it's already out there for the wild world to look at, show it to someone else who doesn't know how to use it and, see if it works for them. This image, Finney Dies, I had to kind of put this in there because when I was a kid, we had to read this book, A Separate Piece by John Knowles. And I opened the book and some kid had written Finney Dies in the inside cover. And Finney was a main character who did indeed tragically die in the book, but way later. And it changed how I read the entire book up to that moment because I read Finney Dies before I read the book first. So give your work to someone who doesn't yet know that Finney dies, right? Not a subject matter expert, not you, not someone who built the product, someone who's experiencing it fresh and doesn't know the ending yet. And then take the criticism, even if it's not technically accurate, even if they have mistakes in what they're telling you. Good writing can help anyone understand the gist of something, even if they don't understand all the technical details of it. So yeah, that's another bit there. So in closing, I would say going over the main points that we talked about, plan before writing. Remember that 8th grade admin, the adorable kid with the hair and the shirt, and build ramps and stairs. Give people 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways to consume your content. They can skip the stuff they don't want and use the stuff they do. And then never stop listening and never stop improving. Because if you want this to be a career, that's part of your career path. So I think we're making progress.
So, and that's a wrap for today's session. A huge thank you to you, Greg, for walking us through the topic. Hope the session left you inspired to write documentation that truly connects with clarity, empathy, and purpose. To everyone who tuned in, thank you for taking the time to be here and for all your great questions and comments. We'll be sharing the session recording and slides soon, so keep an eye out for that. And of course, if you have more questions or want to learn more about Document 360, feel free to reach out. We'll be back soon with another session soon. Have a wonderful day ahead and see you next time. Thanks a lot, Greg. Have a wonderful day ahead and see you next time. Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.